The dog kept refusing the chocolate. When Sarah finally understood why Gus was turning his head away, her hands went numb and her vision blurred. What she discovered in that obscure recall notice was so shocking, it made her question every moment she'd laughed at her daughter's innocent game. One search, one batch number, one hidden truth that separated her family from tragedy by nothing more than a golden retriever's sense of smell. Before watching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another heart-gripping story like this one. Sarah Mitchell had always considered herself a careful mother. She read labels, she checked expiration dates. She kept cleaning supplies locked away and outlet covers on every socket. But somehow, in all her vigilance, she'd missed the most dangerous thing in her home, wrapped in cheerful foil and tucked into her daughter's snack drawer. Emma was 3 years old, with curls the color of honey and a laugh that could light up the darkest room. Her favorite treat was those chocolate bars, the ones with the bright red wrapper and the cartoon mascot. Every afternoon, like clockwork, she'd toddle to the pantry and point up at the box, her blue eyes wide with hope. "Choc choc, Mama. Please?" And Sarah would hand her one, watching her daughter's face transform with pure joy. For weeks, it had become their little routine. Emma would unwrap the chocolate with chubby fingers, take messy bites that left brown smears across her cheeks, and then, in what Sarah thought was the most adorable phase, she'd point at Max, their 5-year-old golden retriever, with mock sternness. "No, no, doggy, bad!" Sarah would laugh every time. "Don't blame Max, sweetheart. He didn't eat your chocolate." Her husband, David, found it hilarious. "She's going to be a lawyer someday. Already knows how to deflect blame." Max would sit there during these performances, his golden tail still, his dark eyes watching Emma with an intensity that Sarah had noticed but never really questioned. Dogs were patient with toddlers. Everyone knew that. Max had always been gentle, even when Emma pulled his ears or used him as a pillow. But something Sarah hadn't paid attention to, something she'd dismissed as quirky behavior, was happening every single time. Emma would break off a piece of chocolate and offer it to Max, her sticky hand extended toward his nose, and every single time, Max would turn his head sharply away, a soft whine escaping his throat. Not the playful whine he made when he wanted to go outside. Something different, something urgent. "Max doesn't like chocolate, baby," Sarah would say absently, scrolling through her phone or folding laundry. "Chocolate is bad for doggies anyway," which was true. Everyone knew chocolate was toxic to dogs, so Max's refusal made perfect sense. Except it wasn't just refusal. 3 weeks into this routine, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard Emma's voice from the living room. "No, no, doggy!" Sarah smiled, stirring the pasta sauce. Then she heard it. That whine. But this time it was louder, more insistent. She walked into the living room and froze. Emma was holding a piece of chocolate toward Max, and the dog was doing something Sarah had never seen before. He was backing away, his head low, his ears flat against his skull. The whine had become almost a growl, not aggressive, but desperate, pleading. "Max, what's wrong with you?" Sarah said, irritation creeping into her voice. The dog looked at her, then back at Emma, then at the chocolate in her hand. He barked once, sharp, urgent. Emma's face crumpled, her lower lip trembling. "Doggy mad at me?" "No, honey, he's just being weird." Sarah picked up Emma, chocolate and all, and carried her to the kitchen. "Let's wash your hands." That night, after Emma was in bed, Sarah mentioned it to David. "Max has been acting strange around Emma's chocolate." David looked up from his laptop. "Strange how?" "I don't know. Anxious? He won't go near it. Today, he actually backed away from her like she was holding a weapon." David shrugged. "Maybe he's getting old, getting weird about food." "He's 5. That's not old for a golden." "Then maybe he's finally learned that chocolate is actually dangerous for him." "Dogs are smarter than we think." Sarah nodded, but something gnawed at her, something she couldn't name. 2 days later, it happened again. Emma had finished most of her chocolate bar and was playing with the wrapper, crinkling it in her hands. Max was across the room, but the moment Emma touched the wrapper, he stood up, walked over, and gently took it from her hands with his mouth. "Max, drop it!" The dog ignored her, something he never did. He carried the wrapper to the corner and sat on it, his eyes locked on Sarah, with an expression she could only describe as frantic. "What the hell?" Sarah crossed the room and tried to pull the wrapper from under him. Max didn't budge. He was a 70-pound dog, and when he didn't want to move, he didn't move. David, can you help me? David came in, saw the standoff, and laughed. What's going on? Your dog has lost his mind. Together, they managed to move Max, and Sarah snatched up the crumpled wrapper, ready to throw it away. But something made her pause. She smoothed it out on the counter, looking at it properly for the first time in weeks. Bright red foil, cartoon mascot, brand name. And there, in tiny print along the bottom edge, something she'd never noticed before. A batch number. She didn't know why she did what she did next. Maybe it was maternal instinct. Maybe it was the memory of Max's desperate eyes. Maybe it was just the accumulation of weeks of strange behavior that her subconscious had been cataloging. She pulled out her phone and typed the brand name and batch number into the search bar. The first result was a news article from a small consumer safety website. The headline was in red. Urgent recall, popular chocolate brand contaminated with lead. Sarah's hands went cold. She clicked the link, her heart beginning to hammer against her ribs. The manufacturer has issued a quiet recall for batch numbers 47821 through 47835 after routine testing revealed trace amounts of lead contamination from faulty factory equipment. While the company maintains the levels are below federal thresholds for immediate danger, prolonged consumption, especially by children, could result in lead poisoning. Symptoms may include developmental delays, behavioral changes, and in severe cases, neurological damage. The phone slipped from Sarah's hand and clattered onto the counter. Sarah? What's wrong? David's voice seemed to come from far away. She picked up the wrapper again, her hands shaking so badly she could barely read the numbers. Batch 47824. Oh my God. The words came out as a whisper. Oh my God, David. What? What is it? She couldn't speak. She just held out the phone. David read the article, his face draining of color. How long has she been eating these? 3 weeks. Sarah's throat was closing. Every day, sometimes twice a day. She loves them. I kept buying them. I kept giving them to her. We need to call the pediatrician. It's 8 o'clock at night. Then we call the emergency line. Now. The next 2 hours were a blur of phone calls, frantic explanations, and finally a rushed trip to the emergency room. Emma, confused and frightened by her parents' panic, cried in her car seat while Sarah sat in the back, holding her daughter's hand and repeating, "It's okay, baby. It's okay," even though she didn't know if it was. At the hospital, they drew blood. Emma screamed, and Sarah had to hold her down while the nurse found the vein. The sound of her daughter's cries would haunt Sarah for months afterward. We'll have the results in a few hours, the doctor said, a kind woman with gray hair and steady hands. Lead poisoning is serious, but if we caught it early, the prognosis is good. Children are resilient. If, Sarah's voice cracked, what if we didn't catch it early? Then we'll deal with it. But right now, let's focus on getting answers. They waited in a small room with blue walls and a poster of cartoon animals. Emma eventually fell asleep in Sarah's arms, exhausted from crying. David sat with his head in his hands, silent. I should have known, Sarah whispered. I should have noticed something was wrong. How could you have known? Max knew. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Max knew the whole time. He was trying to warn us. Every time she offered him that chocolate, he turned away. He could smell it. The lead. Dogs can smell metals, can't they? He knew it was poison. David looked up, his eyes red. The wrapper. He took the wrapper. He was trying to show us, and we just thought he was being weird. We laughed at him. At midnight, the doctor returned. The blood test shows elevated lead levels, she said carefully. Not critical, but definitely concerning. Another few weeks of exposure, and we'd be looking at serious intervention. Chelation therapy, possible long-term effects. Sarah's knees buckled. David caught her, holding her up. But she's going to be okay? He asked. With monitoring and no further exposure, yes, she should be fine. You caught it just in time. The doctor paused. What made you check the batch number? Sarah thought of Max, sitting on that wrapper, his eyes desperate and knowing. Our dog, she said quietly. Our dog told us. They drove home at 2 a.m, Emma asleep in her car seat, a prescription for chelation supplements in Sarah's purse, and instructions for follow-up blood work in 3 weeks. When they walked through the door, Max was waiting. He always waited by the door when they came home, but this time was different. He didn't jump or wag his tail. He just sat there, watching them with those dark, knowing eyes. Sarah knelt down in front of him, and for the first time in weeks, she really looked at him, at this patient, gentle creature who had been trying to save her daughter while she laughed and dismissed him. "You knew," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You knew the whole time, didn't you?" Max leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers, a gesture he'd done since he was a puppy, a gesture of trust and love. Sarah wrapped her arms around his neck and sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't listen. I'm so sorry I didn't understand." David knelt beside them, one hand on Emma's back as she slept in his arms, the other on Max's head. "You saved her," he said, his voice thick. "You saved our little girl." The next morning, Sarah called the pediatrician to report the contaminated batch. Then, she called the local news. Within a week, the story had spread, the recall had been expanded, and the manufacturer was facing lawsuits from dozens of families. But in the Mitchell household, something quieter had changed. Emma no longer ate chocolate bars, but she did share her apple slices with Max, who took them gently from her hands. And when she played her games of pretend blame, pointing at Max with mock sternness, Sarah no longer laughed it off. Instead, she watched. She listened. She paid attention to what her dog was trying to tell her. Because she'd learned something that most people never truly understand until it's almost too late. Sometimes the guardians we need don't speak our language. Sometimes they can't explain the danger they sense. Sometimes they can only turn their heads, whine softly, and hope that we're wise enough to ask why. Sometimes the line between safety and tragedy is guarded not by locks and labels, but by instincts we've forgotten how to trust. What we dismiss as animal behavior is often ancient wisdom, speaking in a language older than words. And the greatest danger isn't always what we can see, but what we've trained ourselves to ignore. If this story opened your eyes to the unseen guardians in your own life, don't forget to like this video, comment about a time an animal's instinct saved you, and subscribe for more powerful true stories. Share it with friends and family, because sometimes the smallest warning signs carry the biggest truths. Sometimes survival depends not on what we know, but on who we trust enough to listen to.